This is 222 Broadway, a 31-story tower in Lower Manhattan, and in March, brand new concrete beams on its rooftop addition cracked. Workers bolted rods through the concrete, strapped the beams in heavy steel plates, and finished the repair without telling the city a word. So why did New York City freeze this entire building 4 months later, with residents already living on 13 floors? This is Project Breakdown, where we investigate the world's most ambitious structures and the engineering failures that brought them down. New investigation every week. Here is what actually happened. Over the next few minutes, you will find out exactly what cracked and why, how the crew fixed it, what the law says they were supposed to do the moment it happened, how an emergency 3 miles uptown sent inspectors straight to this address, and what a shutdown here means for every empty office tower in America waiting to become apartments. Start with the order of events, because the order is the whole story. In March of 2026, on the newest floor of the building, 2 freshly cast concrete beams cracked. The crew that poured them did not walk away. They drilled through the damaged members, ran steel rods clean through the core, and pulled them up tight to clamp the concrete back together. Then they wrapped the damaged sections in heavy steel plate. A third-party structural inspector looked at the finished work and signed off on it. By any working definition, the beams were fixed. What did not happen was a phone call. The Department of Buildings was not told. The repair drawings were never filed. And for 4 months, while apartments below were being finished and leased, the only people who knew that the top of the building had cracked were the people who had cracked it. On the 23rd of July, the city froze the entire project. It did so not because the beams were failing, but because nobody had said a word. So what kind of building was worth that silence? 222. Broadway stands in the financial district of Lower Manhattan. It was completed in 1961 as the Western Electric Building, and it was designed in association with Shreve, Lamb, and Harmon, the firm that gave New York the Empire State Building 30 years earlier. Nobody built it to be beautiful. Western Electric was the manufacturing arm of American Telephone and Telegraph, the outfit that made the telephones in American living rooms and the switching gear behind every call. And this tower was where its paperwork lived. It rose 31 stories and 393 feet, with roughly 775,000 square feet of floor space, laid out in the deep, wide floor plates that mid-century offices were built around. It worked. For 60 years, it was a solid, unglamorous, rent-paying box. Bank of America filled it. WeWork took a piece of it. It was the kind of building that never makes the skyline postcards and never misses a mortgage payment. That raises the obvious question. After 6 decades of doing exactly what it was built to do, why would anyone cut this building open? The answer is that its numbers collapsed. In 2014, the asset management arm of Deutsche Bank acquired a 95% stake in the tower, in a deal valuing it at roughly $502 million. That was the top of the market for buildings like this one, a stable Manhattan office block, fully leased, in the financial district. Then the tenants stopped needing the desks. In 2023, Bank of America's lease on close to 600,000 square feet ran out, and the bank did not renew. Occupancy in the tower fell to around 31%. 2/3 of a Manhattan skyscraper sat empty, still heated, still insured, and still taxed. In March of 2024, the New York property firm GFP Real Estate and the investment group TPG bought it for $150 million. Against that 2014 valuation, that is a fall of roughly 70%. A tower that once traded for $500 million changed hands for less than the price of a mid-sized office park, because in the market of 2024, an empty office building is not an asset, it is a bill. You do not pay $150 million for a bill unless you have a plan to turn it into something else. And the plan here was housing. Gut the building and refill it with nearly 800 rental apartments, rebranded as the Ray at 222 Broadway. In January of 2025, the partners closed a construction loan worth $288 million to pay for it. So what does $288 million of construction actually buy inside a 1961 office block? The answer is more than most people imagine, because offices and apartments are not the same machine. An office floor needs 1 bank of restrooms and a couple of risers. An apartment floor needs plumbing to every unit, drainage lines down through 60-year-old structure, gas or electric service to every kitchen, ventilation that runs around the clock instead of 9 to 5, and a second protected stair so that everyone on the floor has two ways out at 3 in the morning. The architecture practice. Cetra Ruddy drew the conversion. Leading Builders Group was hired to build it. DeSimone Consulting Engineers was hired to work out whether the 65-year-old frame could take what was being asked of it, and at the very top of the drawings was the part that turns a converted office block into a building people pay a premium to live in. A brand new floor, cast on top of the existing roof, an amenity deck, 40 feet of new structure above the old parapet, with an outdoor swimming pool. That is the piece that matters, not because it is glamorous, but because of where the weight goes. Here is the thing every ironworker and every concrete finisher already knows, and every buyer of a rooftop apartment does not. Weight is not a number on a drawing. It is a force looking for a way to the ground, and it will find one whether you have planned the route or not. Put a swimming pool on a roof and you are not adding a pool. You are adding the water. About 8 1/3 pounds for every gallon of it, plus the concrete that holds the water, plus the deck around it, plus the mechanical plant that filters and heats it, plus a summer evening's worth of people standing on it. All of that presses down into the new concrete floor. The new floor hands it to the 1961 steel below. The steel carries it sideways to the columns. The columns carry it down 31 stories, into the foundations, and out into the bedrock of Lower Manhattan. Every one of those handoffs was designed by somebody in 1961 who was thinking about desks. None of them were designed with a rooftop pool in mind. That does not make the conversion reckless. Engineers reinforce old frames for new loads every day of the week, and they are good at it. But it does mean the margin is thinner here than anywhere else in the building, and the newest concrete in the whole tower is the concrete carrying the newest load. In March of 2026, that is exactly where it cracked. 2 of the newly cast beams beneath the planned deck cracked. And here is where a good foreman's instincts matter more than any headline, because a crack in fresh concrete is not automatically an emergency. Concrete is strong in compression and weak in tension, which is why we run steel bar through it. It shrinks as it cures. It moves as it takes up load. Some cracking is ordinary. Some of it is a warning. The questions a seasoned hand asks are always the same. Did the mix cure too fast? Did somebody stack material on that deck before the concrete had reached full strength? Did the shoring underneath settle while the pour was still green? Did the reinforcement in the beam match what the drawings called for? The public record does not tell us which of those it was. What the record does tell us is what the crew did next, and the fix they chose says plainly that nobody on site treated this as cosmetic. They ran steel rods straight through the damaged members and tensioned them, clamping the cracked concrete back into compression, the same principle as a bolt pulling 2 plates together, scaled up. Then they encased the damaged sections in heavy steel plate, so that even if the concrete inside had lost some capacity, the steel outside would carry it. A third-party structural inspector reviewed the finished repair and found it adequate. That is the strange, uncomfortable heart of this story. The engineering worked. The system that failed was made of paper. Under Chapter 33 of the New York City Building Code, the rules for a moment like this are not open to interpretation. When a structural condition arises during construction that could affect the safety of the building, the Department of Buildings is to be notified immediately, and that means at once, not at the end of the job, and not once it has been fixed. If the repair departs from the approved drawings, amended plans, and the engineer's calculations go on the public record, so that the next inspector, the next owner, and the next engineer, 20 years from now can see what was done and why. None of that happened here. The rods went in, the plates went on, the inspector signed, and construction carried on. It is worth being clear-eyed about why that rule exists, because from the inside it can look like bureaucracy. A city of 8.5 million people lives and works inside structures none of them can see the insides of. Nobody in an apartment on the 14th floor can inspect the beams above them. The entire arrangement runs on a bargain. The people who can see are obliged to tell the people who cannot. The filing is not paperwork about the safety system. The filing is the safety system. And in the ordinary run of things, nobody would have found out. The plates were hidden above a ceiling on a floor nobody lived on. The apartments below were leasing. The job was on schedule. Then, on the 7th of July, something happened 3 miles uptown that changed what the city was looking for. At the former global headquarters of Pfizer, itself midway through a $720 million office-to-residential conversion, structural steel columns buckled, floors sagged, the surrounding blocks were cleared while the building was stabilized floor by floor. A working construction site had become an emergency scene inside a single afternoon. The Department of Buildings put its forensic engineering unit onto the problem and made a decision that turned out to matter more than the incident itself. Rather than waiting for the next emergency call, inspectors began working through the city's major conversion projects one by one, on site, looking for what had not been reported. On the 11th of July, that sweep reached 222 Broadway. Inspectors went up to the newest floor and found steel plates bolted around concrete beams that appeared nowhere in the city's file for the building. There was no notification on record. There were no amended plans. There was a substantial structural repair, 4 months old, that officially did not exist. A partial stop work order was issued within days. On the 23rd of July, it became a full freeze on the entire project. On the 24th, Desimone submitted a revised repair package and structural calculations to the city, the filing that, had it arrived in March, would have made this a footnote instead of a shutdown. And by then, this was no longer a complete construction story, because people were already home. Temporary certificates of occupancy had let residents move into 9 floors in May and 4 more in July. That is, 13 occupied floors of families who signed a lease on a brand new luxury apartment in the financial district, who moved their furniture in, who had no idea that the top of their building had cracked in the spring, or that the city was about to freeze the job above their heads. The city's ledger against the project lists 4 failures. The Department of Buildings was not notified when the condition arose. Amended repair plans were not properly filed. Work was carried out that did not conform to the approved construction documents, and the required professional engineer drawings were missing from the record. The developers see it differently, and their argument deserves to be heard properly. GFP and TPG describe this as a reporting timeline discrepancy. They point out that the repair was completed months ago, that it was reviewed and found adequate by an independent inspector, that the building's stability was never compromised, and that they expect to finish the conversion within a year of being allowed back to work. On the narrow question of safety, the city agrees with them. Inspectors found no condition requiring a vacate order, and the residents on those 13 floors stayed where they were. So both things are true. Things are true at once. The building is standing and stable and independently checked, and the project is frozen anyway. That freeze is expensive in a way that does not show up in any photograph. A $288 million construction loan does not pause when the site does. Interest accrues, property taxes accrue, insurance, site security, and contractors kept on standby all accrue. Every week the cranes sit idle. The arithmetic that made a 70% discount look like a bargain gets a little worse, and the apartments that were supposed to start paying that loan back stay unfinished on the floors above 13 families who already live there. And 222. Broadway is not alone in this. It is the second major office to residential conversion frozen by the city inside 3 weeks, with the sweep still moving. That is the part with consequences beyond one address. In 2024, city planners estimated that roughly 45 million square feet of older commercial space in New York could be eligible for residential conversion. That number gets quoted as though it were a solution to the housing shortage. It is not a solution. It is an inventory of 60-year-old buildings, each one designed for a purpose it is about to stop serving, each one needing new plumbing, new egress, new fire protection, and very often new structure, and each one supervised by a Department of Buildings that has just discovered it cannot assume it is being told what is happening inside them. Which brings this back to the beams, and to what this story is actually about. The cracks were found, they were engineered, they were repaired in steel within weeks, and an independent inspector agreed the fix was sound. On the pure engineering, the people on that roof did their job. The failure was somewhere else entirely, and it is worth naming plainly, because the record supports it. In a city this dense, we all live inside other people's engineering. Not one of us can check it. The whole arrangement holds together on the understanding that when something moves that was not supposed to move, somebody says so immediately, in writing, on a record that outlives everyone involved. Break that, and it does not matter how good the repair was, because nobody can tell the good repairs from the hidden ones. The beams were strapped back together in a matter of weeks. The trust took 4 months and a citywide emergency to surface, and trust is the one structural member no steel plate can splice. The city's sweep is still moving through Lower Manhattan, and 222 Broadway was only the second thing it found. Thanks so much for watching. This is Project Breakdown. If you enjoyed this investigation, hit the like button and subscribe, and there will be a new megastructure breakdown next week. Until the next one.